I'm going to begin by thanking all of you for taking time out of your schedules to join us today. We have our second town hall meeting, and the purpose of these meetings, as we discussed in our last meeting, was really quite simple. We primarily want to open the line of communications between the executive branch agencies, Northrop Grumman, and VITA, for the sole purpose of advancing the notion that we can have a complete transformed IT infrastructure system in Virginia. Since we last met, we have made some significant progress on transformation. Most recently, I'm told the DSS, which is one of the state's largest systems, was almost completely transformed, largely because of the commitment of staff in the agency and the willingness to work with VITA and Northrop Grumman to move that agency towards a uniform IT infrastructure. Despite that progress, we still have a lot of work left to do. Thanks to the support of the governor's cabinet and several of your agency directors, we were able to successfully formalize a program committee team that consists of one representative from each secretariat. The purpose of this committee is to really surface challenges that you all face as we work with VITA and Northrop Grumman to move towards the system that we would like to have. We think we've put together a fairly useful agenda today based largely on the feedback that we've received from this committee. To help us work through the agenda, we've invited leaders from Northrop Grumman and VITA, and they have graciously agreed to join us in today's meeting. So today you will first hear from Linda Mills, who is the president of Northrop Grumman's IT division, and following her brief remarks, I will turn the program over to our MC for today, Secretary Chopra, who will guide us through the rest of the agenda, which includes the committee reports on transformation milestones, agency transformation templates, and an upcoming billing survey that we hope to implement and get completed in time to work out some issues around billing. As with last time, Secretary Chopra will close today's meeting with a discussion with you on the issues that we face in transformation. I urge you in this discussion to be respectfully frank in raising questions or concerns, while embracing the spirit of cooperation that we need to make this challenging project a success. So to avoid taking up any more of your time, I will turn the podium over to Linda Mills, the president of Northrop Grumman's IT division. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I noticed when we walked over here, your daffodils are all in bloom, so I was very jealous about that because ours are just barely up, kept sticking their heads out of the ground up north. I'm president of Information Systems within Northrop Grumman, which is a $10 billion IT business, as Wayne alluded to, and it's headquartered in Reston up in Northern Virginia. I also have a great deal of respect and appreciation for everyone's focus on the mission and the services that you provide to all of us as members of the Commonwealth. There's many of our employees that live in the state of Virginia. There's about 35,000 of them, actually, that live in the state of Virginia. And they all are very appreciative of what you all are doing to make their lives easier and to enhance the quality of life here within the state of Virginia. Northrop Grumman is a very mission-focused company. We're very proud of a lot of the work that we do for the defense and the intelligence communities, as well as civilian agencies and then state and local governments. Now, in my former lives, I was both a CIO, so I have some appreciation of what that means, and I also had the corporate CIO report into me for Northrop Grumman. So I've been through personally just a few transitions, and by their nature they tend to be somewhat disruptive because you're taking out the old hardware and the new systems and the old systems and you're putting in the new system. And the thing that I've always found, and Wayne also alluded to this, is that the secret is partnership and communication. And we look forward, and we've appreciated both the partnership and the communication between ourselves and VITA and the Commonwealth, and we look forward to continuing that partnership and communication back and forth between all of us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aneesh.
Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you, Linda. So one of the ideas behind our agenda was to break this into several parts. The first piece is that we wanted to ensure all of you were on the same page about where we collectively are on transformation. And so we've asked Northrop Grumman, there's basically sort of two templates of how we measure progress. One is where we are on network transformation, which is critical to the success of the partnership. And then second, where are we across the broader set of agencies by tower, if you will. So we're going to ask, if you don't mind, Doug McVicar from Northrop Grumman to present those slides. And I believe his are here. And then following that, we'll have the committee reports from the program committee that presented over the last couple of weeks. So let me first turn it over to Doug for an update. Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Aneesh.
Yeah,
Just
can we
the
turn
lights.
Tristan, in the back? Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Morning, everybody. Thrilled to be here to give you an update on where we are with transformation. Guess we're going to launch right into it. I need to explain what this chart is up on the screen. We're behind schedule. Okay, so I'm here to explain where we are and ask for your support to get back on schedule, if at all possible, but at the minimum not to continue to lose ground on the schedule. Let's talk about network. I think you're all aware that network is the entry point into all of our services. So if sites are not on the network, providing the transformed service is going to be very difficult, if not impossible. And so we've been very focused over the last few months on completing the network transformation. We had an ambitious plan. I want to just show you where we are against that plan. So the top line, the dark blue line, says the January 15th plan. That's the plan we brought forward to accelerate network transformation, to attempt to get the entire transformation effort back on schedule to complete to the greatest extent possible by the end of this fiscal year. That plan had 2,252 sites, so good news. Over the last couple of months, we've been able to pare the actual sites that need network transformation down to 1,881. So on February 6th, we updated our schedule, and that's the green line. All right, so we were still trying to get to the 1,881 by June 30th, or actually, in order to complete transformation, we had to be done by the end of April with those 1,881. We have accelerated or had augmented the staff. We put additional staff in place to be able to achieve that schedule. And then let's look at the bottom line, the actuals. To date, we're at 1,227, about 600 to go. And we have not been able to get our production rate up to the level we need, which is that green line. We're forecasting to stay parallel to that green line, and that puts us 3 weeks behind schedule today. Okay, so the bottom line here is that we're asking for your continued cooperation to get these sites scheduled and get up to our production rate of about 12 sites a day. We're running 6 to 8 sites a day on a good day. We need to get up to 12 to get this thing finished so that we can then schedule the follow-on activities with each of the towers we're going to talk about so that those can be fully effective in getting these services transformed. There are basically 4 coordination points with every network turn-up. We've got our service delivery staff. We've got Verizon back office. We've got Verizon in the field and or their local exchange carrier. And then we have the agency staff on the site. And our throughput is indicative that in about half to a third of the cases that we schedule each week, one of those 4 elements is not ready. Okay? Sometimes we're not ready, and we fess up to that and reschedule, ask for your indulgence, and try to move on. But a lot of times you're not ready on your end either. And the only way we're going to get through this is constant, regular, daily communication on all of these network transformations in our future. We've assigned an agency deployment manager to every agency. You should know who that person is. If you do not, be happy to clarify that during a break here. But it's that person's job to coordinate those details with you to make sure that we're ready, that you're ready, and that we've got a solid date when we can come up and do those network swings. Okay? So that's the network situation. Before I move on, I want to just talk about a little bit more about the transformation process and how we schedule things. We have a standard work breakdown structure that we've applied to every agency's situation. So there are many activities in the standard plan. There's about 14 to 16 master activities in each plan. Some of those we do once per agency. Some of those we do once per site. So for network, desktop, email, those kind of things, every site we go out and schedule the activities for that tower on a site basis, but many of them we do once per agency, and then some server, depending on where the servers are, we could have many activities scheduled. We blow those master activities down to a significant level of detail. The current master schedule for the entire Commonwealth's transformation has about 105,000 activities in them, in the entire schedule. And we post status to that weekly. Okay, the status, we apply a percent complete to every low-level activity that rolls up into an overall percent complete. What I'm going to show you now is where we stand today with our percent completes, and I hope we'll certainly make these slides available to everybody. Of course, this changes weekly, but this is where we are today. We've got the agencies down the side in each row. We've got across the top a total transformation number, and this is our end of February number. We're at 54%. Okay, this transformation goes from 0 to 100 for agency onboarding to the centralized services. We're not counting the fact that we have built out all the central infrastructure as part of the transformation total. All right, so that central infrastructure counts for 0 in this model, and then as we add agencies, we increment the percent complete. Right now, in our calculation, every agency is equally weighted, even though some agencies are significantly larger than others. But for this calculation, agencies are equally weighted. We're 54% complete with the agency-focused transformation efforts. Then across each tower, we've summed up where we are. We're significantly we're doing well with desktop. We're significant complete there, 93%. There's still about 5,000 desktops out there that we've got to refresh the next couple of months. And again, we ask for your support to get those orders in so that we can schedule the final desktop refreshes. And then starting in July, we're going to start the next round for all those desktops that were bypassed in the first refresh. We will start in July and begin the next round of refreshes that will go for a couple of years until we get on just a normal, regular cycle of desktop refresh. We're doing pretty well in help desk. Help desk has been a big success, and I do just want to qualify the comment that the Chief of Staff made that DSS cut over their help desk. It's not the entire agency transformation complete. The point that I think we sent them up was that the help desk was complete a couple of weeks ago, but it was the biggest cutover we had as far as the number of end users. So I want to thank DSS for the great cooperation. We recently rolled TAX. Thank TAX also for the great cooperation in rolling the help desk to the new service down in Lebanon. So we're doing well in desktop. We're doing well in help desk. Server transformation, we're making great progress. We've got the transformation sets out at many of the large agencies right now, doing the conversion week in, week out. We're moving more and more servers from a legacy infrastructure to the new hardware, and then the idea is that we pick that set up and move it to CESC at the appropriate time. Network, we're only showing 35% complete. So you can see how the network count is not all the activity that goes into this. There's still a tremendous amount of work outside of the counts I showed you on the last chart in order to get totally cut over on network. Just the cut over and the re-IP of the local site is one element, but then there's still a lot of back-end work that's got to be done before we can call that activity complete. Fred is going to get up in a few minutes and go over what our definition of complete is. So these percentages all depend on what we think the end state is going to look like, and I think we have a good picture of that for you later. So right now we range from agencies that, these are the top 20 up here that we've been focusing on, from DJJ at 80% down to, we're under 10% still with some agencies. We've got the numbers up here for everybody. Go ahead and just kind of scroll through them, and I'm sure we'll make these slides available to you. Your ADM can give you this data week in, week out at any time to let you know where you are in the percent complete. Okay. I think I'm going to ask Fred to come on up. Ask Aneesh to ask Fred to come on up.
I'll set the stage for it. Thank
go
you
over
very
the
much,
next.
Doug. Thanks, Doug. We had convened our program management committee about a week and a half ago, and the 80-20 rule of the discussion was this: please define what transformation complete means. So we've really built the next part of this agenda around that question. We've had a committee of agencies who helped what the presentation will be you're about to see from Fred Duball. I want to thank Barbara Garnett, Rick Davis, and Morley Rao in particular for helping craft the answers to the question, what does transformation complete mean? And before we get started, show me by a show of hands how many of you think you know the answer to that question. If I were to ask you what does transformation complete mean, and be honest about it. There are probably a handful of you in the room. You feeling comfortable about that answer? Thank you. This presentation is for the rest of you, and my hope is that by the end that you'll all feel comfortable by knowing what that means. So let's begin by inviting Fred Duball to give us the definition, and then we'll have some dialogue about it. I'm going to call his slides up as he does that. I think this is you. Yep. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Fred Duball, and I'm with VITA. Excuse me, and I'm primarily responsible for the activities on the program. For those of you who do know me, be kind. When the Secretary formed the committee to take some of the feedback, from this group on how we can communicate better, et cetera, one of the topics was the definition of transformation. So we worked closely with the committee members, given the time we had available, and we came up with these next series of slides. Tony Shute, Northrop Grumman's lead architect, is going to join me on the stage in a few minutes to give you some of the detailed walkthrough and explanation on the slides. But I want to start by giving you kind of an overview or an overall discussion on transformation. The service areas that are outlined on the pictures that you see on the slide are critical to not only completing transformation, but they're extremely interdependent. You have to have help desk to be able to answer calls for customers who have PC problems or network problems. You have to have a network in place to be able to have messaging. You have to have servers done to be able to host those messaging applications and platforms on. And the wrapper around all of that are the processes and tools to be able to measure, monitor, and report on our health and our progress across all of these service areas. So when we struggled with the definition of transformation, in any given agency, the approach that we might take could be a little different, primarily driven by the uniqueness of your agency, the uniqueness of your legacy infrastructure, some of your applications dependencies, some of your business requirements, and so on. So this definition of transformation is a global definition, but recognize how we implement transformation in your given agency will in many ways be on a case-by-case basis, that will be very much driven by the project plans that Doug McVicar spoke of earlier. So while this is a global definition of transformation complete, recognize how we approach it might be a little bit different based upon any given agency's requirements. Okay? So as the slide points out, what we're really striving to get to is something we call a managed services environment. And what we mean by that is you basically have an environment in place that we could manage and monitor and report on our progress, the health of the performance, and be able to use the tools and processes in place to be able to resolve problems as they arise. We're making progress in all of these areas. Hopefully you're seeing some of that in your agencies today. But Tony Schute's going to come on up and talk about each of the different service areas, and then I'll come on back up and talk about what we are hoping to accomplish by June, recognizing that we're going to have individual conversations with those of you that we hope to complete by June. Okay, Tony, would you like to?
Okay, thanks a lot, Fred. Morning, everybody. I'm Tony Shute. I'm with Northrop Grumman. I manage the engineering and architecture team for the transformation, well, for the IPT program, or the Northrop Grumman part of that. I think it was, Fred did a good job in describing the fact that this is an integrated solution. It's really important to understand that it is a combination of people, process, and technologies that do come together to deliver these managed services to keep the infrastructure available for your lines of business. What we're going to look at now is each individual, what we call service area, or tower as it's sometimes called, and talk about some of the services that constitute managed services for that environment. Again, you need to understand that some of these services are dependent on other services from some of those other towers. We're not necessarily going to show a lot of those dependencies, but hopefully you can understand that. We'll try and point some of them out as we go through this, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about them later on. First of all, from a service desk perspective, the main service there is a consolidated enterprise service desk. That's your help desk. It's a single point of contact for the enterprise. That enables any user to have one call, one place to call for any question, any service, any problems. That basically constitutes tracking of those things. We can report on problems as they come in. We open up tickets, we track those tickets, and we have the technology and the process behind reporting on all that. ITIL process implementation. That's basically those processes that come to light through the help desk. Incident management basically utilizes your ticket management system, and then problem management, that once an incident is resolved, are there trends? Do we need to carry forward and come up with a more holistic solution in the event that incidents relate into trending problems? Knowledge base populated. We have a knowledge management system where we maintain various degrees of information about your environment, about the services that we provide, about the technologies, processes, and procedures that we use, or that the help desk uses to actually help resolve problems, help close tickets, and help support the end user. E-support services, basically it's a set of web-enabled services that allow for things like self-help, password reset. Users can basically, from their environment, invoke an e-support service to basically reset their passwords without having to call the help desk. Web-based ticketing, so there's a level of visibility into where is my ticket, can I open up a ticket from my desktop without having to place the call, and can I see the status of that ticket. Operations and administrative services. Basically, that's the account provisioning. When new users come on board, when we need to create accounts in the enterprise environment for network access, for remote control through VPN access, it's the help desk that provides these level of services. So from a help desk or service desk perspective, these are the main services that basically the managed service environment brings to the table to say, once achieved or once enabled, we believe that we're now managing the environment from a managed service perspective as it relates to service desk. Both Fred and Doug talked about the network and how the network is the foundation or the enabler for all the other services. It's very important to understand, and I think we all understand that without the network, we can't basically ride services, implement technology, and get out to the enterprise to manage that from a central location. So it's really important that that network transformation complete and that we maintain that network availability so we can monitor, manage, and support the enterprise. What we have here are several bullets that basically depict the services that constitute network transformation. First bullet is the migration to the MPLS network. Basically what Doug was talking about in the first slide, the tracking of, where are we with network transformation. That basically constitutes, new MPLS circuits going in place into various sites, new switches, new routers, basically a technology refresh, and then a new addressing schema for those IP-based resources that ride on that network. And that's basically your IP readdressing initiatives for desktops, for servers, for network printers, and any other IP-based asset. Inbound, outbound internet traffic. A lot of your environments have, internet points of presence stemming out from your local environments, from your headquarters, or maybe some remote sites. It's different in a lot of your areas. We're basically bringing that to a centralized location and having what we call the internet secure gateway out of our data center. So transformation says that all internet access, inbound and outbound, is now routed through our ISG. And from there we can manage, we can control, and we can ensure proper security at that level across the whole, basically the entire network enterprise. What I have on here is, well, what we have is legacy internet points of presence accessed, managed, and controlled. That's really an interim state. We can't flip a switch in the environment and say everybody's now, or the entire agency is routed through the ISG. There's going to be a time frame as we go from site to site and begin transforming those networks. But what we want to ensure right up front is that we gain some level of management over those IPOPs or those internet points of presence that are in place at the agency prior to basically redirecting them or rerouting them through the ISG. So it's important that we gain some level of management over that. What we call legacy VPN access, rehome to CES, that would be your remote access down at your agency sites. That, we have a solution for that out of the data center where we can control the remote access coming in and manage that hopefully more efficiently. So that basically gets transformed or migrated over to our data center. The removal of the legacy WAN and LAN circuits. Following transformation or LAN transformation, network transformation, and following the refresh of all the technologies, the routers, the switches, we take those old circuits out, we take that old hardware out. In some cases that may not happen. There may be requirements to leave some of that infrastructure in place for whatever agency requirements may arise, or we may not be able to satisfy the connectivity that we need to at that point in time, and we may need to leave some of that infrastructure in place for some period of time. Those are the things that when the transformation teams work with your environment, work with your support staff, we make those determinations and then set the schedules accordingly. And then it all comes down to enterprise network management. Once we're transformed, we can now manage the network from a central location. We can monitor that. We can ensure availability across the enterprise, and we can see traffic patterns in there and provide things like, quality of service as it relates to, moving data, moving information across the network. What you're going to see in all of the functional areas is this, ITIL process implementation. That's the implementation of that process that acts as a discipline to ensure that we have change control, we have configuration control, not only going forward as part of our transformed environment, but even during the transformation activities themselves, to move that into a more disciplined change control methodology. And then leveraging some of the monitoring capabilities, ensure that we monitor those resources and those things deemed as key points or key metrics relative to the services that we're providing. We're providing services to a service level agreement. We need to ensure that we monitor those things and we report on those on a periodic basis, almost daily, to understand where we're slipping, where we need to enhance in order to meet the service level agreements at the end of each month. Desktop transformation services, basically desktop modernization or technology refresh. I think a lot of you have been through that already. It's a refresh of the hardware and the software on the desktop. What we have here is we say, as required / agency approved. In some instances, what we're doing is we're doing what we call soft refresh. The hardware is fairly new, and based on working with the agency, we'll make the decision to leave the hardware in place and maybe just put some of the management software on that hardware so we can basically manage it from that point forward. So we're not necessarily doing the hardware refresh, and we do more of a soft refresh. In other instances, it's a full desktop refresh. Enterprise systems monitoring and management. Electronic hardware software inventory, and we can list them out: electronic application metering, centralized software delivery services or electronic software distribution, and patch management distribution. That gives us and you the capability to understand your assets, to manage the assets, to have a good inventory, to be able to update the software on those machines from a security perspective, as well as roll out new technologies and new software to those machines in a more what we'll call controlled and auditable fashion. And again, electronically, eliminate a lot of the person-to-machine touch that we have to go through in the environment. And again, you see ITIL process implementation. Again, enterprise change, configuration, and release management are the main processes that govern desktop. All the support services are tracked through incident management, and again, the 24/7 service level monitoring. There are key things relative to the desktop that we monitor for, and that's mean time to repair and things of that nature, where we can track, we understand what those key indicators are, for those systems and where that information resides, and we report on that to ensure that we're in line with our service level deliveries. Messaging and directory services. I want to say that there's a big emphasis on this. There's a lot of services that we deliver with this, and it's like desktop refresh, is really end-user facing. But there are two pieces to it. There's a directory service piece that enables the authentication or the use of information relative to applications as it pertains to users. And then there's the enterprise messaging. They're tightly coupled from a messaging perspective in that the messaging directory lives in the directory service that we're putting in place. So for messaging and directory services, what we're talking about is an enterprise solution for name resolution, for WINS, for DNS, as opposed to having some of the disparate DNS and WINS solutions that are out there for IP name resolution. We have an enterprise solution for that. Our solution basically, and this is something that we work with the agencies, or the teams work with the agencies when we roll into transformation, in moving those resolution systems in place or integrating with those that are in play at the agencies. And then the centralized support and management of the LDAP-enabled computer policies and objects via the COV Active Directory. So what we're talking about is an enterprise Active Directory for all of you. Have a single enterprise directory that would provide those directory services as to multiple directory services. So the migration from the individual directories that are in your environment or Active Directory environment into the COV enterprise directory will allow us to enable email from a centralized perspective or from an enterprise perspective. Enterprise systems management, again, relative to email, it's a 24/7 monitoring and notification of our infrastructure that carries those email services, that carries the directory services as well, which is integrated, and any other infrastructure relative to those solutions. Centralized performance monitoring and capacity planning of those services and the infrastructure. And then the continuity of operations through redundant hardware solutions between our data centers, between CESC and SWESC, in accordance with the service levels that we're basically standing up to. And again, you see the ITIL process implementation, which incorporates the change, configuration, and release management controls for that service area. And again, service level monitoring and reporting is something that we do, on a daily basis to ensure that those service levels relative to messaging availability and directory service availability are where they should be as we approach every month and reporting on that and standing up to SLAs. Server transformation services. Bunch of bullets here, basically relative to server transformation. We're looking at server consolidation and virtualization where feasible. You know, we work with you, with your staff, and understanding the environment and look to say, can we reduce the footprint through virtualization? Can we take the server environments that are in play today and basically virtualize them onto standard hardware that we have for that environment and consolidate those workloads, consolidate that footprint. And again, I say where feasible, not everything can be virtualized. And that's an understood thing. So we do the assessments, we determine what can be virtualized, what can't, and we move forward from there. Platform hardware refresh and OS refresh. Again, this is an assessment. In the event that we have older technology out there and we can refresh that, we'll undertake that. We'll refresh the hardware. We'll refresh the operating systems. Again, working with the environment to ensure that the applications and services that those services provide is accounted for. There may be some instances where some of those need to stay in place. You may need to operate on some old iron for whatever, for some level of OS compatibility or application constraints that are in play. Those will also be addressed in the environments, and we move forward and create plans for those. MPLS network residency. This is important. This is where we take the environment in order to provide that level of monitoring and support to an effective and efficient manner. We need to reside on the new network. This is where the network needs to be transformed so we can take the resources, those servers, and move them on or readdress them. There's the actual readdressing onto the new network, but it doesn't necessarily mean readdressing will always happen. There are instances where we can't change addresses due to application constraints or other reasons that we may come across, at which point we have to make some decisions. Can we carry the new addresses? Can we NAT those addresses? Those are other things that come into play as we work with the agencies. Physical relocation to the data center. And again, that's where applicable. Not everything where we have a direction to bring everything to the data center because of the security posture, because of the ability to effectively manage that environment. Not everything moving to the data center may not be the right thing for all server resources. There may be some level of LAN resources that need to stay on the LAN. There may be some application dependencies that are going to force that server resource to remain within the agency environment at a headquarters. Those things are identified. The application constraints are identified and understood. Those are mapped out, and then we make the decisions on what's going to get moved, what's going to get readdressed. Do we keep things in place with its old address? Can we? A lot of those decisions are made through the transformation team. Internet-facing servers to CES, that's the DMZs. There are a lot of your environments today, you have these public-facing web services. As we consolidate to the data center, we have that single internet point of presence and the internet secure gateway. We created or established that public-facing DMZ environment in the data center. We can move those web servers into that environment and create that level of security posture that we require for those, basically for those services and those servers. Not all the agencies have DMZs set up, but there may be some resources that do require that. So one of the things that we do is work with the environment to understand, you know, what is the impact, how do we move these things, let's get them moved into the DMZ, and then we can shut down the IPOPs down at the internet points of presence within the agencies and function that way. Again, it's a level of collaboration, and I can't overemphasize that. These things are just not, you can't plan this stuff on the back end and just assume that we can just move things. It's really a collaborative effort with your environments to ensure that the level of understanding required to how your applications and services function so that we can properly plan that and then react accordingly. Enterprise systems monitoring management. For all the servers that fall under managed services, we basically perform 24/7 monitoring of that environment. That monitoring happens out of our data center wherever the servers live, be it at remote sites, be it at the headquarters, or relocated into our data center. Centralized performance monitoring and capacity planning for that infrastructure is performed. Backup services invoked by managed service level agreements. Where we have agreements to perform backup services to some service level, we provide those services. Disaster recovery services where applied and required. Basically, where we have a requirement to provide disaster recovery services from our data center, we have that capability with our secondary data center, our SWEST data center down in Southwest. In some instances where disaster recovery is required for things that may not be in the data center, that's where we work with you, understand what those requirements are, and put a solution together and provide that level of service. And again, ITEL process implementation, like all the other services, change, configuration control, those processes become instated into the server discipline, all working together as one change control or enterprise change control management environment. And then service level monitoring to ensure that we're meeting our service levels or understanding what those service levels are as we approach the end of each month. What's different about this slide is we talk a little bit about security transformation services. We're looking at security basically sets a posture and the discipline for the other service areas. So really, when we talked about desktop, when we talked about server, you may have noticed, configured or hardened to security standards, to Commonwealth standards or to partnership standards. Here's where the security standards come into play in those environments. From a network perspective, we're ensuring that there's event log correlation, the internet secure gateways in place and configured, and those processes are defined accordingly. And most of all, there's firewall management and administration for those firewalls that are in the environment. And probably a big thing is the network intrusion detection, or IDS, and prevention. That gives us the capability of doing network intrusion detection across the enterprise, where we're not just looking at it at an agency level, we're looking at it from an enterprise level, from an ISG, where we can basically look at the entire environment and understand trending as it would apply to all agencies and do that level of intrusion detection and catch that way ahead of time, understanding who's being targeted when and where. Desktop compliance scanning, basically relative to the configurations of the desktops. Patch management is an important service there, keeping the desktops, up to date with that level of security patching to that platform. We offer hard drive encryption as a requested service. Workstation antivirus is something that's basically mandatory along with patch management on the desktops. Vulnerability assessment scanning is something that we do on a periodic basis. From a server perspective, again, you have the patch management, looking at it from the bottom. You have the server build hardening to ensure that servers are built to a particular security posture. And then host-based intrusion detection for a select and identified set of servers, and mission-critical servers. This is where we actually do intrusion detection at the host level. From a service desk perspective, it's to ensure that the process is defined accordingly for Active Directory account provisioning, and that basically remote access through VPN, that process is defined in accordance with security standards. Messaging, it's ensuring that the messaging virus and spam protection's in place. Some of you are familiar with the Iron Port. Directory service and access controls are to what they need to be to ensure the proper security postures. And then Active Directory account provisioning for your LAN access, or actually network access, I'm sorry. And then email encryption where required. So these are services that, or security-focused services that are applied to the email tower. From a security operations perspective, it's basically, one of the key things here is doing the vulnerability assessment, on a periodic basis to ensure that that level of protection is enabled. And you can basically read the list here. We're talking end-user VPN for remote access. Internally signed SSL, secure socket layer certificates, is really something that falls into the messaging space. It's down under security operations as what I'll say a governance, but it's really a service that's provided out of messaging. Penetration testing, computer forensics as it relates to those things that are trended through security monitoring, and then basic IT security awareness and consulting expertise. Enterprise awareness for threat management, and where we look at the environment and we make the environment or those services and those agencies and support personnel aware of threats as they occur. And then again, service level monitoring for those things that we stand up for service level agreements for in the service area, in the security area, I'm sorry. So that would be a pretty quick run-through of, you know, those things relative to the service areas or towers that say, here are the services that we bring to the table as part of transformation, and define transformation when enabled.